I think it's pretty safe to assume that you are excited about Bloodborne coming up. We're excited too. If you're going to buy Bloodborne on Amazon or even a PS4 to play Bloodborne on, consider using the link that you can find at Duckfeed.tv/tipjar. That is a link to Amazon from either the US, the UK, or Canada. We get a little kickback from every purchase that is made through that link, and that goes a long way towards helping us, afford PlayStation 4s of our own and Bloodbornes of our own. Once again, that is Duckfeed.tv/tipjar, and we really appreciate the support.
Some of our landings were desperate adventures. We are now prepared to meet the inevitable counterattacks with power and with confidence.
My name is Gary Butterfield.
My name is Kole Ross.
And you're listening to a very special episode of Bonfireside Chat, a Synod favorite?
Yes.
A Synod favorite.
A forbidden favorite.
Yeah, yes. Whenever I'm making up fake Lords of the Fallen boss names, I keep wanting to say Adjudicator, but like...
I was thinking about that too, right?
Because that's legit.
Well, yeah, or Old Hero, or the Storm King,
a
bunch of like
Storm Lords.
Yeah. Yes, Riders of the Gales.
Yeah, this shield will be called Block.
The Maelstrom.
Yeah, so the Maelstrom's good.
The Maelstrom would be pretty good.
That's pretty good. Yes. What are we talking about, Cole?
Well, if you are a person who can't gather context clues, we are talking about Lords of the Fallen as a continuation of our kind of inspirations and followers, imitators and followers series here. This interstitial season between Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne, which is nigh upon us as the Maelstrom. Yeah.
It encroaches.
Yes, across the veil.
Yes.
This was developed by Deck 13 and CI Games and published by Bandai Namco, dipping their snoot in another till, for the PC, PS4, and Xbox One here in 2014.
Yeah, and this is it should be obvious why we're covering this,
right?
This is if I think Vadi is the first person I've seen who said this, but I've seen many people say that like this is kind of a step in Souls games becoming a genre. And if so, this is the first major kind of step in that direction. Like this is a game in the Souls genre without being necessarily a Dark Souls game. Yes,
and also this is the first Souls game on a next generation platform too.
Yeah, that's true.
So there's a little bit of baggage and craziness that comes with that. But whether intentional or not, this has been marketed and received by the public as a Souls alternative.
Right. You got a quote here in the notes.
Yes. So Tomáš Gop, the executive producer, this was developed in Eastern Europe. In an interview with Game Informer, he said, "No matter how much we see Lords as a game of its own, if someone says it feels totally like Souls to him or her, I can only acknowledge that. The issue is not whether these comparisons happen or not. It's rather whether people who base their judgment on it will see things we've done differently as automatically inferior because they are not like Souls. We hope not."
And I think that, and I think we haven't talked about this game a whole lot, like outside of right now, but a lot of the things they did that I don't dislike the things that they did that were not Souls because they were not Souls.
Yeah.
Like there are things I dislike. There are things I like. Usually when we do these things, we kind of like, we did like Demon Souls for the Dark Souls player and like Dark Souls 2 for the Dark Souls 1 player. But this, since it's cribbing it so much, we've kind of broken this down in like things that you might like about Lords of the Fallen and things you might not like if you like Souls, which I assume you do because you're listening to this podcast.
Yeah. And when we announced this, we had a lot of people asking like, hey, is this game worth checking out? Should I pick it up for $20 on the Steam sale or whatever? And, I kind of hope that people who are curious about this use this first part of this episode as a guide to determine if it sounds like it's worth it to them.
Yeah, it is a mileage. It is not an unqualified recommendation in a season full of unqualified recommendations. But there are things to like about it, such as the combat is probably the thing it most directly cribs. and it feels really similar to that. It's way heavier, so everything has a huge sense of heft and momentum to it, you and the enemies. But if you can get into that, I think there are moments where it works pretty well. And if you just kind of like that, that kind of toe-to-toe block and counterattack kind of combat, which doesn't always work in this game, but when it does, it works pretty well. And,
like even the lighter weapons feel like they carry a great deal of inertia to them. And so this is a very tactical experience where you're trying to kind of like build into a groove. And if you mess up, you are going to leave yourself exposed in a way that that is, I think, far more like cumbersome. Too wrong and too right than
and it is too black and too white, as we'll probably get into. As far as the story elements and lore and stuff.
It gives you a chance to kind of see this, this kind of play, this third-person action RPG with the slower sensibility in a different world, right? And whether or not that world is, worth exploring is a matter for discussion in these episodes. But kind of taking this and taking the Souls play away from the Souls world and seeing which parts stand on their own. Right.
Yeah, like if you're a Souls fan the way that we are, where like you are just kind of interested in it. For me, as an experiment, like seeing like what would happen if you plopped a Dark Souls style control scheme in a totally different game was interesting to me. And this game does a good job of that. I would say that the combo system that they have in this is pretty cool. It has a system of timed hits that kind of works with stamina. So like if you time your attacks perfectly, you lose less energy and can do more of them. And I like that a lot. Like it kind of disincentivizes just hammering down on the R1 button and kind of plays into this sense of timing.
Yeah. You know what? It feels like a little bit like Gears of War. How they reward you for timing certain things in the animations.
Yeah, I assume that like there are going to be a lot of reference like AAA kind of games that this cribs that I don't know about. Like I've never played a Games of War. I never played the Games of War. War's not a game, Hawken.
You would know that if you read the books.
If you had read the scrolls that I read, Hawken.
It is written in the runes on your face.
Yes. But I assume that some of the things that I thought this did that were neat probably were done elsewhere. Like they're not necessarily innovative, but they're innovative in this genre.
Yeah, kind of alongside that, they have the stances that are with there, so it gives you just like a little bit more kind of moment to moment combat choice, right? Kind of as a labeled feature as opposed to something that is a function of a build.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Also, you can charge up your strong attacks, which is pretty good.
And it ends up being necessary because that's one of the kind of differences we'll talk about.
Yeah.
In the game.
Yeah. So in Shovel Knight, we used that kind of as an example because it cribbed the way Dark Souls handles death. And this is very similar to that, except they add some complications to it, right? So you have a ghost instead of a bloodstain, and you're still trying to get it after you drop. However, there's a timer. It is degrading as you go along.
Yeah, there's a timer for it, and if you hang around your ghost, it heals you, which is awesome because where you're going to leave a ghost is where you're having trouble. At that point, you have this choice of either fighting this thing that you died on with an incremental advantage because you're being healed at the cost of your experience, which I think is a really, really cool system. Like, I like that a lot. And there were many times where, like, I would go, if I was dying against a boss multiple times, I would go kill some scrubs just to get some kind of ghost and then make sure that was left there to give me the edge through the fight. There's kind of like tactical ways you can use your bloodstain, so to speak. And I think that's awesome.
And the way it treats experience in general is a little bit more varied than the Souls. It's not all or nothing, whether you get a new attribute or whatnot. At these checkpoints, you can kind of bank these experience points either in getting a new spell point or a new attribute point, and you don't have to be able to buy it all at once. You can kind of put it on layaway.
And that actually plays into another system that's really cool that I neglected to mention in the notes, is this kind of multiplier that also reminds me of Shovel Knight, where the longer you go without touching a bonfire, or the equivalent in this game, the more you get an experience multiplier. So when you run into a bonfire, I'm going to keep calling them, they're crystals. When you run into one of those, if you forego refilling your health and setting a new spawn point, your experience multiplier goes up. So, it plays with risk and reward in a lot of really neat ways. in general, I think, and all these kind of mechanics tie into it. And it's probably like definitely the strongest innovation in this game. The story has some okay beats on its own terms. It is not it's not like this is a good game story. There are individual moments that I'm like, this is kind of cool. And I feel like by the standards by which video games are judged, it's probably pretty decent, if nothing special.
Yeah.
Like, it is not a game that is ever going to get called out for its good writing or story. And it's not nearly as good or as nuanced as the Souls, but it's not like laughable, wife arm Bionic Commando style.
Yeah. There are some beats, there are some notes, especially later on with some of the characters that are pretty affecting. But at the top, you heard us kind of riffing about how ridiculous some of the names are. This is basically a Halo or Destiny story. In terms of the things that are in play. So, yes. Yes, the prophet of truth.
Yeah, it is. And we'll talk about that when we kind of talk shit on the general aesthetics for the next 6 hours. But like, it is Teflon in the worst way.
Yeah. Right up to the title.
Yeah, right. Literally everything about it. I defy anyone to remember any of these bosses after you fought them.
Yeah. But we will at least talk about what they're like to play.
We'll remind you. It's the one with the armor.
Yeah, it's the one with the shield. Oh, yeah, wait, that's all of them?
It's the guy with the shield. So if you're ever wondering which boss we're talking about, just think it's the one with the armor and the shield.
Yes.
So,
something that's kind of crazy about this, lots of secrets.
Yeah, and secrets that are hidden in a way that are different than Dark Souls secrets are, but are also like kind of tricky. Like very early on in the first level we're going to cover today, there's a really awesome kind of hidden passage that unlocks like kind of a major feature of the game. And it's super hidden in a way that was like, well, this feels really Dark Soulsy to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Did you get the Shard of Heroes? Again, just generic name. The name of something.
Yes.
I'll talk about it when we get there. But that allows you. It's how you can respec. It unlocks weapons. It does something with like a piece of geography that we run into later that's conspicuously functionless.
Yeah, I did not.
yeah. There's a thing called the Shard of Heroes. I didn't get all the secrets in this game, and I looked them up online and stuff. But there are a lot of them, and some of them are actually pretty neat. The way that they handle special boss weapons, I think, is pretty cool.
Yes.
If you kill a boss while fulfilling, you always get a boss weapon, but if you fulfill certain conditions, you get a special version of it. And that's pretty cool. And the conditions usually play into kind of how that boss operates or their gimmick.
Yeah, they kind of operate like in Dark Souls 1, the tails a little bit. Like it is something that you apply to yourself above and beyond in order to get something extra. In this case, a legendary version of the weapon that was going to drop anyway.
Yep, pretty cool.
Yeah. So let's talk about the negatives. I think this is mostly where I land.
Yeah. I can see it. We'll do our final summations at the thing, but like any praise I give this, like it's got 1,000 caveats and asterisks next to it. So like it is something that like it's not a spoiler. I've said it a bunch of times on the show and I've said it on Facebook. Like I think this game's worth playing, but it's not great.
Right.
By any means. It's like a 7 out of 10.
I was thinking a 6.5 if you're using the whole scale.
It's something like that. Like it is like a C like average game that's interesting. But anyway, what sucks about this game, Cole?
Man, anything about the way it looks or sounds.
Yeah. Yeah. The music is all universally forgettable. The general like aesthetic, like some of the like individual environments look fine on a video game, level. Like if I'm not comparing them to Souls, but they're not memorable. And everything's design is gross and busy.
Yeah.
That's definitely a personal preference thing. Like a couple of people on Facebook were like, I like the designs a lot. Like you can dig this kind of thing. If you like your, spiky armor and your like Space Marine style stuff, like that is an aesthetic that people like, but just people who aren't me.
Yeah. If you're looking for a referent, think either Darksiders or kind of some of the more metal albumy parts of either a League of Legends or a World of Warcraft.
I kept thinking Diablo.
Yeah.
Personally, like it's just very like weirdly Diablo-y, but like huge shoulder pads, huge like, spikes, like even down to like creatures like skin, like when you have monsters, like there's just so much going on. It's very hard to get a bead on them. And this, helped me appreciate Souls more when we talk about how like some of the designs in Souls games are kind of stupid and how I dig that. Like nothing in this game is not dead serious looking.
Yeah.
So there's none of that like contrast or subtle offness to the aesthetic when everything is supposed to be taken super seriously.
I think that seriousness is kind of a philosophical malaise through this entire game.
Yeah.
Like it just it crowds everything with a complexity and kind of an earnestness of design that actually gets in the way of me being able to, like, I don't know, parse a space or an enemy or like find anything to grab onto. I think that the Teflon extends even beyond the boss names down to like, oh, every single hallway looks like some kind of like automatically generated Unreal Engine 4, like, oh, there are some books and desks and stuff.
Yeah.
And just in general, I think that there's a little bit too much like next gen fluff to this. It's like going to see a bad 3D movie where in order to sell the effect to you, they have a bunch of shit in front of the lens. Wherever you go, there's dust or ash or soot falling right around you. And just, I think that they kind of have opted to gild the lily rather than grow the lily in a way that's super off-putting to me.
Like some of that individual stuff didn't bother me. It is a real exhausting thing for me though. Like all of those, like some of those individual hallways, like full of books and stuff, reminded me of like, it was like, oh, this looks like, like this looks like a Hero Quest map. Like I kind of dig this, and then some of those kind of effects things, like I was like, oh, this kind of looks good. Like we didn't really talk about the graphics in general. Like that's not really what we do. But there are elements of this game that look pretty nice. Like it's not a poor graphic. If you're not talking about designs, if you're just talking about the graphics as far as a score in a Game Informer or whatever, are pretty decent. But for me, it was like something that I kind of dug, but eventually just wore me down into nothing.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't like I just thought it was a problem. I thought it was a problem that there was, again, no contrast.
Yeah.
That was really my thing. The storytelling in this, if you're coming expecting like that storytelling, which is the reason why Dark Souls can support our podcast, it's not here.
No.
It is the reason why we're going to cover this in 3 episodes, and we cover Dark Souls in 20, or 20 episodes, because the storytelling is not only like a step down in quality, but also a huge step down in complexity. Like it is just kind of told to you. There's lots of characters kind of giving clunky exposition. They're done through audio logs, which like as far as a way to get story information, I actually like. Like I like being able to walk down a hallway and listen to something. But that is a real conventional way to do it. Like it's not creative or kind of nuanced.
Yeah, and this is kind of carried through with the way dialogue is done. So as opposed to, the way Dark Souls handles it, which is kind of feeds you a bunch of lines until you have exhausted it, which is probably a little bit too cryptic by half. This kind of handles it through a dialogue tree. And sometimes they present these, moral choices that are a little bit, kind of wonky. Like it's a little bit more spoon-feedy. In a way that I don't particularly appreciate, especially because they're spoon feeding me something that feels kind of bland.
Like that's really my problem with it. Again, like it feels like a video game in the way it's spoon feedy. Like that's what I expect from most video games, but just the content is not there,
right,
to make it good.
Yeah. So, we're not going to go into the individual text of any given audio log. It's there. You can go back and listen to it as you're playing, but not a lot of it sheds light on what's happening. Most of them are apocalypse logs, right?
Yeah.
Describing some stuff that's happening and kind of foreshadowing some things that are narratively obvious.
Yeah. And some like the big twist in the game like does get some background through these in a way that is, at least there's something there, but that the twist is feels so weirdly arbitrary and unearned by the time it happens that like it is just hard to care. One of the things that's kind of part and parcel of this is that we're not going to cover with this with the same detail that we do Souls, partly because it's really hard to. Like I feel like there is I haven't sat down and like read every audio log from this because I'm not that interested. Like it doesn't, like it feels like it just doesn't warrant it. And if I did, like what's the story going to be? So like if we talk about something, we're like this was dumb. Why did this person do this? And you're like a Lords of the Fallen super fan. And you're like, no, it was because Antanas found the Goblet of the Mighty. And we're just like, what the fuck's the Goblet of the Mighty? Like we don't know. It's probably because we're not interested.
Yeah. Yeah. So it feels a little bit like a failure of due diligence, but man, I just, there were long stretches of this game that are just not reflected in my play notes because it's just like, and then a next thing happened. I walked down a hallway.
Yeah. It rolls off again.
Yeah. Like water off of a wing.
Yep. Which like segues to the next point, which is like the levels also have that like lack of noteworthiness and lack of thoughtful design. Like every once in a while I would stumble across like a Dark Souls ass shortcut that was useful. Mostly because you had to do a lot of backtracking, which is not fun. But I would come across some kind of shortcut and I'd be like, oh, this level is actually pretty well designed. And then there are also levels that I'm just like, I have no idea where to fucking go. Nothing is telegraphed well. This is pretty bad.
Yeah. It's it speaks to the Disneyland effect, right? How everything in Dark Souls is kind of pointing you to roughly where you're supposed to go. This doesn't have that. This has hallways that lead to hallways.
Yeah, it should have a map. It seems like that's not very Soulsy, but the game is eschewing that part of being Soulsy. Like this needs a map. Like not like a little, line on the floor telling me where to go.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Something that's kind of, alongside that and a little bit with the aesthetics, everything kind of looks the same. Something about a Dark Souls, especially Dark Souls 2, which, we've noted is not afraid to be purdy. Different areas kind of mark themselves as being different by having color palettes, right? And this kind of doesn't.
There's two.
Yep.
There's three, I guess. The Catacombs is pretty big and looks a little bit different, but there's three.
Yeah.
Really. And that's not really enough. Like you don't cover very much ground in this, and they kind of pad it out by making you go through a couple of the areas different. And to their credit, like they do a lot to make the encounters and the enemy placement and stuff in those areas different. Like the level designs are bad. Some of the actual individual encounters I think are pretty well designed. But instead of like we talk about the new area noise in Dark Souls, like that's really exciting. There is a huge dearth of that.
Yeah. Well, there are plenty of areas. Like as you walk from like you take a right down a hallway and then you go from the Chamber of Seeing to the Chamber of Prophecy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're within like bigger areas and they don't do a lot to like separate themselves out. Like even in Dark Souls 2, the Huntsman's Copse felt so different from the Undead Purgatory, even though one was just an appendix to the other. Like they just felt so different. Here it's like, now that I'm thinking about it, it is like 4 areas with some stuff connected between them,
which is a little bit of a bummer. And that lack of variety kind of goes into why the backtracking's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah.
And so Dark Souls 1 had backtracking famously. Like that's part of what a lot of people like about it is it has this big world that you have to kind of navigate and it's interconnected. But that feels like a different flavor.
You're just going through a larger variety of areas.
Yeah.
Like it's a different flavor, but also you're just going through a bigger space.
Yeah. And weirdly, like in Dark Souls, you feel more empowered when you're going back through these other places. Like I never reached a point of empowerment like by the numbers, right? Eventually I figured out the different, gimmicks of the different enemies and how you had to approach those. And I think that the enemy design on the whole is really good, but it's kind of resistant to either player or character knowledge trivializing them. And
it's because it's two conflicting design choices because it's them changing the enemy's encounters. Like when you go backtrack through an area, it's different. Like it's not the same. So you're not going to have that feeling of mastery because this is meant to be a new challenge. It's just kind of reusing the same level.
Right.
But now it's human occupied rather than Rogar occupied.
Yes.
So I think builds are a real problem in this. This is something that like I've talked about as one of my favorite things about Dark Souls and done a bunch of like different YouTube playthroughs and playthroughs of Dark Souls where like I will play through with it feels very different. Like I'm going to play with 2 daggers. This feels totally different. It's like a different game. This game tries to do that with kind of 3 different archetypes, but only one of them feels viable to me, and that was a problem.
Yeah.
Like I played through the first time when it came out. I played through as a heavy warrior guy, and then I tried to do New Game Plus and couldn't, and then tried to play through as a rogue, and I just was not making any headway. and then stopped and was like, I've got a deadline. I'm going to play through this as a big heavy weapon guy. And I think the game is the most fun that way too.
Yeah.
Like it is, everything has this weight, like you want to like tank hits and exchange them and stuff.
Yeah.
But it kind of makes all of the weapons and items and abilities and stuff that you get that lend themselves to a different playstyle kind of worthless, because it seems like, at least to me, that they're not really meant for you to play.
Yeah. It seems like they designed the game around, you know, kind of the I'm carrying a big stick kind of thing, right down to the physics and the way that like dodging works.
Yeah.
Right. Like your dodge keeps you pinned to the ground. It doesn't feel like you have any kind of like iframe around it. And there's no way to kind of really design your character to, you know, take advantage of that.
Yeah. I mean, you have iframes around your dodge. Like for bosses, I did a lot of dodging through stuff.
Yeah.
But man, everything about the game wants you to wear heavy shit, because like fairly easily, about the halfway point in the game between equipment, you can wear the heaviest armor you have and still mid-roll.
Right.
Like it's not meant, you know, and that would be fine. Like mid-roll was adequate, but I couldn't play as a thief and I couldn't play as like a caster in this game and actually have it work for me.
Right.
And other people's mileage may vary who listen. Like I know people do caster playthroughs of this. Like I've seen reviews and stuff that complain about how magic, you know, makes it really easy. Like magic is supposed to be very powerful, but I never made much headway into it.
Yeah. That speaks a little bit to the credit of the game too. Like the fact that magic is just kind of built in as part of your character. And the fact that ranged combat is not like out of your reach if you're playing something that would otherwise be considered a melee attack.
We'll talk about the gauntlet like when we get to it, which I think is actually kind of neat.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems with that.
Yeah.
So.
This next point in the notes, it looks like it is a negative. It's more of a neutral. I just meant for it to be like, oh, here's another thing. There's a sequel announced already. Apparently this did really well, or at least well enough to warrant more, you know, development.
And I'm really happy about that. And the reason why, it's not like I'm ever going to play Lords of the Fallen again. Like I played it once when it came out and I played it once for the show, but I want them to learn from it. Like I do feel like there's enough seeds of something good to make me want them to like get better. Like an iteration on this could be really good.
Right.
You know, like it is a weird thinking about Demon Souls is really strange, because like Demon Souls emerged fully formed from the fucking head of Zeus, you know, like as just this amazing golden god. Even though like, I mean, it's a little bit Kingsfield-y, but not even remotely like really like Kingsfield. And I think that like, that's the weird thing. I think most games do work their way towards kind of a approaching, you know, steady improvement.
Yeah.
And I like that these guys are going to get a chance to do that. I would like to play it if it is better.
Me too.
You know?
Yeah.
So
I'm curious about what kind of timetable they're on. I don't know if there's any pressure to like, oh, we got to crank this out. But I agree with you. Like we are in this kind of very weird spot. It used to be that sequels were kind of a mark of shame a little bit. I'm talking like 20 years ago, because time is meaningless. But now, like sequels do generally get better. There's not a great amount of rot. Like that is not the rule that the sequel is always going to be worse.
And also like we're not talking about like an annualization kind of thing. Like I don't want a Lords of the Fallen, you know, Modern Warfare. Like like every year. But them doing a second one, I think feels like that would probably be a good place for them to like, okay, we learned our lessons. You know, here's like I had this weird feeling that like the people who did the play and the people who did the writing in this game were sequestered, and the people who did the writing had a cool story in them and couldn't get it out.
Yeah.
Like, and didn't know how to, because like there are weird kind of like B-movie fantasy concepts that I like in the story. And I would like to see them be able to like, just even for this, whoever that poor guy was, like just let him finish this thing, you know?
Yeah.
Poor guy. Yeah. So what are we covering?
Okay, so we're doing this in 3 episodes, which feels fair given the length of the game and kind of the complexity. Because the boss names are meaningless and kind of so are the area names, I feel comfortable saying, oh, we're going to go from here to here and here to here. So in the first episode, we're going up through the Worshipper, which is found in the cemetery.
He's the one with the armor.
He's the one with the armor and the shield.
Yep. Does he have a shield? I don't think he does.
No, he does.
I think he's like one of 2.
Yep.
Yeah.
In the second episode, which is coming out, we're doing these week to week to week. We're going up through the Beast.
Yep.
Okay.
And then after that, through the Judge.
Yep.
And that the Judge is the end.
Yep. And then we're going through the credits. We're going up,
which is the hardest boss of all.
Yep. Well, how crazy would that be if there was a game where there was a mini game over the credits where the character attacked the names?
No, that happens all the time, dude.
Does
like
it?
that's yeah. There's a shooter game that I played. There's the PSP Katamari Damacy has you rolling over the credits in a side-scrolling view.
Oh.
The new championship Tetris, over the credits you do invisible Tetris.
Huh.
Yeah.
Huh. I had no idea.
Yeah, it is a cool idea. Like, you're not wrong. I've seen it a bunch. It would be great in this game, though.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just like wandering through this like field of assets, just attacking, homunculi made out of East German names. Tell us a little bit about the setup, Cole.
In ancient times.
Yes.
No. So this takes place in a world where no sin is forgiven, and we are introduced to Harkin. Harkin, who comes from the land of generic fantasy names. He is a prisoner who wears his sins as tattoos, as runes across his face, which are displayed prominently in the title screen. Harkin has been cast aside by man and forsaken by the gods, but Lord Antanas, who hails from the same realm of generic fantasy names, calls upon him to stop the invasion of a demonic race called the Rogar.
Brayton had an old D&D character he always talked about who was Rogar the Ogre Rogue. And like every time I hear Rogar, I think about that. Like, oh, it's Rogar the Ogre Rogue.
Yeah.
So in this world, long ago there was a group of mystics called the Judges, and they killed the god Adir and sealed him away. And have kind of become like the de facto religion of this world. And then they set about trying to eradicate evil from mankind. But now Adir and his fallen lords are leading an invasion back into this world to try to spread chaos. And Antanas has plans of his own, which we'll find out.
Yes.
You have been tapped to fight these fallen lords.
Mm-hmm. Even though you are a badass prisoner with nothing to lose.
Yes. Yeah, it's kind of like, what is it? Like
That's Gears of War.
Oh, does it happen in Gears of War? Like it's our Suicide Squad? I was thinking about that happens where like you get a bunch of prisoners and have them kind of fight for their freedom, and stuff. But I did not. This is good. If anything, this Lords of the Fallen episode on this series about Dark Souls will reveal how little I know about Gears of War. So, which is nothing.
It's a good series. I like it.
I can't get over how the guys look.
Yeah.
They're disgusting. They look repulsive to me. They look like pieces of General Tso's chicken with heads, like just little veiny, wrinkly lumps.
Yeah,
I hate them.
They look like rejected Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villains.
Yeah. Like if the Ninja Turtles, it's like a human and a turtle mix. It'd be like if a human was just next to a bunch of stem cells from muscle, and then just got mixed with some ooze. Like, I think it's just too hard for me to get over the aesthetics.
It's a human mixed with a smart car.
Yeah. Yeah. And turn into a dumb car.
It is a fun series, though.
I believe it. Like, I'm not. I believe it.
Yeah.
All right. Character creation.
Yeah, character creation. So you can mix and match, and the combination determines your starting stats. So you're either different kinds of magic, solace, brawling, or subterfuge or deception, rather.
Yeah.
And rogue, warrior, and cleric, right?
Yep. And then you mix those. So like my first thing, I was a brawling warrior. The second time I was like I took the cleric magic, but the warrior thing I became a paladin. So they're kind of like they map differently. Once that's essentially, it doesn't make a huge difference, and you have no control over your actual stats. And the classes don't feel quite as different. Like my paladin did not feel that much different than my straight up warrior. Yeah. But really, they just kind of map to warrior, cleric, thief.
Yeah. Regardless, you get the prayer skill, which lets him create a decoy version, which I thought was going to feature more into the gameplay, but it really doesn't.
It kind of it kind of does. Like there's lots of like timed platform puzzle things that come up that you can use this on.
Yeah.
And then if you pump it up enough, it sticks around for a while and actually becomes pretty useful in combat. Yeah. But it's kind of a weird thing for like every class to be able to create a decoy. Like that feels like an advanced move from another game, but it's your basic magic in this.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this ridiculous opening cutscene.
Which, Dark Souls has a ridiculous opening cutscene
that reflects on the game that comes afterwards.
I know, right? That is like elucidated. It is introducing you to a pantheon. No matter how crazy the furtive pygmy is, like that's never answered. But Seath the Scaleless, right?
Yeah.
You're gonna see all this later. I still don't know what the fuck is happening. I don't know when this is taking place.
It's on his way to the monastery, I think, and he ends up I don't know where what's his head's at though, where Kaslo is during this.
But at the end of this, it says, "But that was a different war in a different time."
I guess maybe I forgot that or something.
not later or an earlier.
Yeah, was this when he got like maybe this? Does he have his sins at this point? Is he all scar-faced?
You know what? I don't know.
Because his sins, like I've done a bunch of Googling for like Lords of the Fallen lore, and there's there's very little. There is a little bit. There's very little. Like there's a small group of people who are just like, yeah, remember us? We're looking for this. And one of them, in the teaser images for this game that were released, they showed the different runes that signify the different sins. And then somebody on the internet put them together and figured out what Harkon's sins were. Oh. And it's not that interesting. It's like murder, thievery, and blasphemy. Okay. Are the three that he has. And I was trying to think of a way to, if this was a different war in a different time, and this is actually a prologue, I was trying to think of like a way this could be murder, theft, and blasphemy killing
all at the same time.
Yeah, but he's just fighting a demon.
Yeah.
And he doesn't really fight it. Like a big explosion comes from the hand of God. And that's it. And then he also has one of the worst line reads in the game, which is like, "This is my vow, vow of defiance."
Yes. Yes.
Maybe that's his blasphemy.
Yeah. The vowing defiance.
Yep. To the gods. Maybe this thing is a god. I don't know.
"And so saith Harkon, fuck you. I won't do what you tell me."
Yeah, I know. And then that's it.
Yep.
So then in an entirely different game, we start this game.
Yeah. Like, you know, those cutscenes, those are shopped out to outside, production studios.
Yeah.
Most of the time. And so it kind of seems like they got an earlier version of the script.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Like it was just made to show like that's a proof of concept. Because like in the cutscene, he does creates the doubles significantly. Like maybe that was going to be a bigger gameplay.
Yeah.
Thing, and then it just didn't come about.
Yeah.
So instead, the actual game we start is we start at the Keystone Monastery.
Right. So Harkon and Kaslo, who is this bearded shaman of a priest, are kind of making their...
He's a real shaman of a priest.
Yep.
He's a real bearded shaman of a priest.
Yeah, he's a real witch of a doctor. Are making their way under this snow that is always falling into this abandoned monastery, looking for Antanas. Right?
Yes.
It lays it right on its face.
Yep. We know that we're looking for Antanas, and this place has been overrun by Rogar.
Yes.
Like this wasn't always abandoned. And we get the combat tutorial with a first Rogar. And essentially it's setting it up, teaching you about endurance management, teaching you about lock-on, that stuff that we know about, because of Souls. But if you didn't know that, this would probably be useful.
Yeah. I don't mind this tutorial. Like, I think this is pretty good. Otherwise, like in, the Souls games, this would be messages, laid down, but actually walking you through like a slow motion, like here's the pace of combat and telling you, roughly what the timing on a strong attack are. I feel like that is a quicker, time to launch essentially for being viable in combat against these guys. So this is pretty neat.
I agree. Like I like it. You get to you go up to a door that is locked and you need a key. And around here you're going to find audio logs, which are scrolls on the ground. Another thing I like about this game is that you can't accidentally pick anything up or do anything. Like you hold Y for a second. I think it's pretty good. Because otherwise, like I don't want to start an audio log while already listening to one. I appreciate that.
That even extends to using items and also casting spells.
Yeah, so it gives you like a second to get out of it, so you don't do it on accident. Like you don't want to start opening a door when you're in combat, things like that.
Yeah,
which I kind of dig it. And most of the scrolls in this area say what happened kind of right before you arrived.
Yeah,
which is a Rogar attack. There's also this infection that can happen to people, and the way they're related felt contradictory to me.
Yep.
Like I got an idea here of how they're related that I feel like is undercut at the end.
Yeah.
Of the game.
So it's a coincidence, but they appear to be interconnected right now.
Yes.
Yes.
So you need a key, so you're sent off to explore the monastery.
Yeah, over in these kind of like side wings where they are, kind of where they did do their studying. There's no real studying happening now, and you're kind of introduced to the dreglings of the game, these infected, which are dreglings.
Yeah, they're super weak. They're pretty quick. And they actually, this is one thing that's kind of neat, is they get more powerful as the game goes on.
Yes.
And become more like interesting. They learn some new tricks. Like they're deaf, which the game makes a big, or blind rather.
Yeah.
Which the game makes a big thing about, which is kind of cool. So you can sneak past them. You can sneak up on them and backstab them.
Yeah.
And they will play dead as you approach. And later they can actually regenerate and come back from the dead.
Yeah. So the stealth thing is really weird because that's something I forgot to use later on. And then I would remember because they would, kind of smash some elements together in a way that made you think that was the way to go about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's their fault. It's probably mine, but it feels a little bit like it's dropped to the wayside.
Yeah, they don't use it a lot. Yeah. And you don't have to use it here. You just run up and hit this thing if you want.
Yeah.
No big deal. Yeah, and you get more audio logs, and there's this like creeping, transforming illness that feels like poison in your blood.
I know that I am far gone. I must retreat to the chamber of valediction.
Yeah, exactly. And they talk about how the eyes are the first thing to go, which is why these things are blind. So these infected you're fighting are actually the monks.
Right.
Over here.
Yeah. You also find marauders who are kind of these Rogar, the basic, think like the hollow warriors a little bit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. They map almost exactly to that.
Yeah.
You kind of continue through this. You're introduced to some of the hidden kind of secrets. There's like a little half open door behind some crates or behind some bookshelves. I can't remember, but you can roll under it to get a treasure chest and stuff. And there are lots of secrets in the walls that you either like bash through, or there are things like this. Like that's going to continue throughout the game. I
like how you bash through the walls.
Yeah. Like the shield bash is a really cool move. Like we didn't talk about that in the differences, but like the running shield attack is super useful. I find it more useful than the guard break in Dark Souls.
Yeah.
Like if you run and put your shield up at the last minute, you'll hit somebody with your shield. And like if you're playing a strength build, this will almost always knock them down, or at least knock them out of a guard stance. And it becomes necessary, for some of the later enemies.
And it makes the distinction between different types of shields a little bit more meaningful, aside from weight and stability and stuff. Like a tower shield will behave a lot differently than a regular shield.
Which is again, like I'm going to grasp onto these, not because I'm trying to make any argument this game is better than Dark Souls, but just the very few things this game does better than Dark Souls I want to point out.
Yeah.
And that's how one of the things in like Dark Souls 2, once you can get the shield that has 100% physical block, that's the lightest one. There's no reason to ever use another shield, really. I mean, there's some little special effects, but you're probably not going to use them.
Right.
And the shields do feel very different.
Yeah, and they inform the way you play, and that's one way to bring just a little bit of variety to the builds.
Yep.
Or bring some utility and kind of change up for different situations. That's successful, I think.
Yep. You're introduced to the first black crystal. Here, you can't go in it yet, and this is a kind of a thing that's going to go like a major gameplay concern in this game, is that there you have your save crystals, which are red. You also have these black ones. I think are black. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they're black. They're
okay. Which are like different kind of a puzzle or challenge arenas that only open after you defeat certain bosses, and they're not always after the boss.
No,
like you pass them, and then you're like, oh, I can't get into this yet. And this feels like a concession to the idea that they know you're going to be backtracking.
Yeah.
That I kind of dig. Like, oh, I'm going to come back here anyway. I might as well check out this thing. And usually you get good shit from them. Like, usually, a lot of times the best armor or what have you that I got from one of these.
Yeah. Even beyond stuff like that, you get stuff that's really useful, like utility-wise. So instead of having Estus flask charges, you have empty bottles that fill with health potion. At each checkpoint. Additionally, you can find just kind of free attribute and spell up shards. As you go along, and that's almost always worth it because hey, free dummy.
Yep, and the resistance stuff. Resistance shards, which are actually pretty useful. In this, in a way that like I never use the red and blue burrs in Dark Souls, but they're actually pretty good here. So these are actually pretty cool. I like these things. You get the key. This is also where you can find the Shard of Heroes. Is up on the platform where Kazlo is waiting. On the left, there is some debris that kind of forms a ramp. And one of the windows or tapestries on the wall is kind of blowing, like there's wind behind it. It's telegraphed. It's just really subtle. Like there's wind coming from that door. So if you jump off that into there, you can get the Shard of Heroes.
That's
item.
Crazy.
It's really hidden. Like it's really, really hidden. And especially since what we'll talk about what it does, which is it's kind of crazy that it's hidden so much.
Yeah.
I think you actually need another key that you get a little bit later, but the actual shard is here.
Yeah. So when I say that's crazy, I mean that as like a good thing. Like I'm down as being like totally with the Return to the Asylum being as cryptic as it is.
If they didn't visualize it at all, like if it was just a wall that you just bust through or an illusory wall, I'd be mad at it. The fact that there is this kind of visual indicator is pretty cool.
But it's weird because that visual indicator is something subtly moving, is something that happens all over, just as part of the kind of visual clutter of the world. I call it visual clutter because that's how I interpret it that way.
Yeah, that's totally true.
Yeah.
So you have the key though, and Kazlo opens the door. And you go into this little cathedral area to fight the first boss.
Yes, the first warden.
Yes. AKA the first boss.
Again, at the interest of not sounding like a hypocrite, some of the boss names in the Souls games are kind of dumb.
Yeah, but it's the exception though.
Yep.
Not the rule.
Yeah.
Because none of the boss names are cool in this game.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's okay.
Yeah.
It's a dude with a sword and a shield. His kind of gimmick is that as he loses energy, he sheds his armor and gets more mobile.
Right. Yeah. What's cool about this, and kind of one of the first real kind of epiphanies I had about the way combat is different, is the fact that kind of every part of the enemy is used as a hurt box. A little bit. So as this guy is doing an attack, moving his whole body with his gigantic sword, he actually leads with the shield in a way that like a Dark Souls boss or enemy would not.
Yeah, and he has one of his moves. He shield bashes to knock your shield away and hits you right after. Like he has a couple of different shield bashes, one that knocks you down, one that just knocks your shield out of the way, which is a very much like the kind like a player vocabulary.
Yeah.
Move, like I feel like in a Dark Souls game that move would probably just hurt you, and here it actually like has a mechanical thing of like getting your shield out of the way to hurt you,
and that plays into the kind of the more kinetic nature of the combat in this, the fact that they are keeping track of a lot more kind of collision, and that not everything is just hurt you, like sometimes they are actually managing your movement in a really subtle way. Like I like this guy. He in his last phase when he loses his shield, he does this like pretty twirl, which I think is very funny. He does this like, swirling his sword around him, becomes this like sword dancer, which I think is pretty funny. But back away, block a lot. Look for your openings. Like most enemies have an attack that like leaves them pretty open, and kind of figuring out which one that is kind of the puzzle of a lot of the bosses. Yeah.
This one, it's his overhead sword thing, and if he does that, you'll have a couple seconds to get in some hits.
Yeah. The special condition for this guy, again, the tail challenge is to defeat him without losing any health, which is one of the less interesting ones, but still, I kind of wish there was a way to like if there was a like an audio log that alluded to that.
Yes. Yeah, I think so too. I think that there actually is one for the second boss. Because he's like one of the few bosses, the commander, who we'll talk about, who actually has some kind of like weird, like I hesitate to even say lore. Like there's an audio log about him,
right,
that talks about him a little bit, and I think it kind of hints at it. Something about him like being a warrior who doesn't respect cowards or something like that.
Okay.
I might be misremembering, or it might not be exactly that, but I think it's something like that.
I'll believe you.
Actually the weapon you get from this guy is really good once you can start using it.
Yeah.
It's a big ass sword. It has a really good, it's one-handed R2, which is a cool kind of double gating, like because you might even be able to two-hand this soon, but you won't be able to one-hand it.
Right.
But its one-handed strong attack has a cool special effect.
Yeah. After you defeat each of these bosses, there's a little cutscene where all of the evilness from these lords kind of bullet shots into Harkin.
Yeah, it's like Shadow of the Colossus.
Yeah.
It's exactly as emotionally affecting as Shadow of the Colossus.
I can't tell you how much I wept.
Wept openly. Yeah. What's going to happen to Yetka?
No. Why did I have to kill the executive?
Executive. The senator of blood. He's,
You know,
he barely lived.
you know, I think that the Center of Blood is really focused too much on one issue.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, I was using that using that as a fake name, but that's actually badass. Like, I would love to fight the Senator of Blood. That's amazing.
Okay, so make a non-anime Disgaea.
Yeah. Yep, exactly. So somebody do that anyway.
Yeah.
Please.
That way you can play that game.
Yeah, so I can play it. Good God. I think printies are cute. I don't want to fucking deal with that shit, though.
Yep.
Anywho.
Anyway. We're already making enough people angry.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is a little bit of a plot weirdness because after you defeat this guy, Kaslo is gone. How did he get ahead of you?
Yeah, he got knocked through a wall in the beginning cutscene.
Did he?
But the wall, yes. He gets knocked through a wall. But then instead of like hanging out and waiting for you, he just decides to like get up and wander away.
Yep.
I guess. So for most of the game, I feel like Kaslo is alone and injured. Go find him is the thing that's at your quest thing in the upper left. For like a surprising amount of the game. Definitely this entire episode.
Yep.
Got to deal with that.
Yeah, they're assuming a lot about how much I care about injured elderly people.
Yeah, especially Kaslo's.
Yeah.
So you get your first checkpoint after this, and we talked a little bit about leveling up and banking experience. But this is the game telling you, which is great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's actually a third use for experience points that comes later that, again, like that kind of utility of using experience points, I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like hexes. Like I remember liking that in Dark Souls 2. Like, oh, there's a different thing to do with souls now. Mm-hmm. This does that as well.
Yeah. So beyond the sanctuary, you get to kind of this descent area, kind of leading down to the walls.
Yes.
And this is where you get kind of your first introduction to like, secret walls and bashing and stuff, which took me a long time to figure out. The tutorial around that was not as clear as I would like it to be.
No. And you kind of get these tooltip tarot cards between areas that are also not super clear. Like they're really clear about things that it's like locking on to an enemy is one of the first things players usually forget.
Nope.
No, I don't think they do. I don't think that's true. Explain your fucking shield dash.
Yeah. It's like Adami said, Link, Z-target this enemy. No,
we know. We've been doing this since, for forever.
Yeah.
We know.
Good God, those cards, Gary, the design on them is so bad. Like, it looks like Hearthstone.
Yeah. Yeah. It is a very Blizzard-y in general aesthetic.
Yeah.
Down here, you shield bash through that wall. You can go do that black loot crystal. Mm-hmm. You get an empty bottle, which is an Estus flask shard, essentially.
Yeah. I love the way those black crystals animate.
Oh, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, they turn into these gates into like this hell dimension. I have no idea what it is.
Yeah.
And the weird thing about these black crystals is like they're not all of them, but many of them are very different. Mm-hmm. Like you don't do the same thing in these very often. Like sometimes they're just treasure chests, sometimes they're arenas, but other times they are like, real weird little puzzles.
Yeah.
Like little puzzle, like VR mission style things. Mm-hmm. In this hellmouth that I have no idea what it is, what its significance is.
They have alluded to to where the expansion pack is going to take place. Because in this game we have the human realm and the Rogar realm, and kind of this alluded to third space as kind of the space between. I think that's what this is. Like that is this is the space between in a Dark Tower kind of sense.
I could see that.
Yeah, where a deer was actually banished to.
It has a weird there's a weird mechanic where darkness hurts you. Here, like you have to stay within the light, and they use that for a couple of the puzzle bits. And they're not really puzzles; they're like little agility challenges, which are kind of neat.
Yeah. Sorry, just they play talking heads to let you know that you need to remain in light.
Yeah, exactly. There's also, if you want, or go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I just, the other day I watched Stop Making Sense again. Mm-hmm. Good God, that's so good.
Yeah, Stop Making Sense is great.
Yeah.
Even when the Tom Tom Club comes out, it's pretty good.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say, when you were interrupting me, I thought you were going to chide me for not liking that joke enough.
No.
Like,
oh God, no.
Like, I thought you were going to be like, I thought that. I was like, well, it's not bad.
Yeah, no. Jeez, wow, how insecure am I?
That's it. So you don't want me to answer that. One of the things you can do also, if you can actually get into the cellar here, which is weird because it is a late game area and is really hard. Did you make your way down there?
No, not really.
There's like this game has meat gates in it, which I like. I always like in a game where like your signal not to go here yet is something's going to kill you, and you're introduced to the spider enemies, which are like pretty tough and remain tough for a lot of the game. They're death now. Like they're really hard, and there are actually like puzzles and stuff you have to do down there. So like you can get down there, but it's really just foreshadowing about when you'll return.
Yeah, I came back much later.
Yeah,
like I did that. Yeah.
So let's talk about Keystone, the second area. The kind of outdoor, like the ramparts. This big ramparty soup.
Yep, it is mostly rampart. All of the connective tissue of this game is rampart.
Yeah, everything's built up of rampart.
Yeah, you're walking up and down walls. I think there's some parapets.
Yeah,
couple
some
of
crenillions. Yeah.
Yep. A lot of portculli.
There are actually crenillions. Like, if you like crenillions, this game is like crenillion porn. There's so many crenillions.
Can you explain what a crenillion is? Because I inferred by context. But
on a castle, like the little like zigzaggy tooth looking things, like the high wall, low wall, high wall, low wall. That's a crenillion. Souls actually taught me that word because I was trying to find the shortcut in 4.1 to get to the adjudicator, and you had to jump between two crenillions, and I was like, "What the fuck's a crenillion?" And then looked it up.
Oh,
watch I'm mispronouncing it, and someone will take me a task.
That's fine.
But yeah, so you're introduced to the rogue enemies.
Yeah,
in here, which are like little skinny guys who try to circle behind you, like they fish for backstabs, essentially.
Yeah, again, like the guys in the lower berg.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Like up until like they tend to be just the same archetypes that you're fighting.
Yeah.
Until like I think you get to the demon realm, but here they just they're added here to bring some spice to the to the kind of like combinations they're putting in front of you. The encounters.
And if you want to be really charitable, you could say that like having them be so human plays into the weird end game thematic stuff, but that'd be being more charitable than I want to be. I don't feel like I don't know if that's necessarily intentional at all.
Right.
You're kind of learning a little bit about the backstory of these three judges that killed the gods and then left the world and replaced the religion. Yeah. But I more want to talk about this monk. That again, like we're talking about dissonant cutscenes and deliveries. This guy.
Yeah. He has locked himself away behind a portcullis in this guard tower, and you free him, but he's been bitten by a spider who we learn later is in his lab. And he asks you to amputate his arm, or no, you say like, "Oh, I've got to cut that arm off so you don't die." Like there might still be time, and then I cut it off. Did you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I tried to play as more or less a good guy. For the most part in this game for no particular reason. I don't think there are any consequences.
But don't you understand that he's a prisoner with nothing to lose?
I do understand that.
What are his
he
sins?
Can be redeemed. Blasphemy. When you cut off his arm, this is one of the weirdest like dialogue things that happens in any game where like he's like, "You have to help me." You cut off his arm, you do this little like fun swing of your axe before you do it, which I think is very funny. You cut off his arm, and then he's just hanging out there without his arm, like no bleeding, no nothing.
No shock.
No shock. And then he realizes you're a prisoner and tries to get you to put the axe away, like so you're not going to kill him after you just cut off his poisoned arm. It's really weird.
Yep.
It also, the game does not give you, like you can help him and give him a potion, but the game doesn't tell you this. It takes it's taking from your cap. Like anytime you have the option to give someone a potion, you're giving them a permanent potion charge.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
I was giving away potions willy-nilly. I was like, I'll just go back to the checkpoint.
I didn't realize until my second time through the game, but I was like, why? And that's part of like, it's confusing too, because the checkpoints don't always refill all your potions, but this is part of that. Why that was so frustrating is because you actually have fewer potions.
Whoa.
A lot of the time. Yeah. Like, so think twice, like you're essentially trading an Estus shard for a little bit of experience. Probably not the best choice, but the game doesn't really tell you that you're doing it permanently.
No. Well, that'd be crazy. Okay, so what I need to do, I'm poisoned. Give me not just a potion, but all of your potential. They're charging a royalty on your potions.
Yeah, exactly. It reminds me of the first time I found a deal with the devil in Isaac, because I thought I was like, oh, this is just going to hurt me. And then not realizing that it was actually going to take my heart containers, not just my hearts.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. But and I guess you do get a benefit if you save this guy and do that, then he comes up later and is a benefit to you. But some of the other people who ask for potions from you, it's just good money after bad.
What's to say about morality? I was perfectly fine giving something away that I could get back easily.
It says you're playing a video game.
Yep.
Like, that's all it says.
Yeah. So, yeah, that's a good pro tip. Anybody who's playing this, don't be. Okay,
Yeah,
read some Ayn Rand.
Yeah,
Do not pacify the parasites.
Yeah, exactly. It's Enlightened Self-Interest is the name of the game. Lords of the Enlightened Self-Interest. And I didn't realize until my second time through the game. So don't feel too bad.
So it must not have been that big of a deal. I never really ran out of potions. You ramp up pretty quick on them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you continue along this wall to the north. I don't know where they get north from. It's kind of like headed to the east after Drink Lake, but here we are. I don't even know if the connections make sense if you're going from south to west to north or whatever. But you find not only some crossbowmen who engage you at range, but also your own ability to take people out at range.
Yeah, the Gauntlet, which is this game's like answer for most projectile magic and all distance. Like, this is what you get instead of a bow or a crossbow or anything like that.
Right.
You have the Gauntlet.
What's great is this isn't like restricted by any kind of stat either. So this puts ranged combat within the grasp of most kinds of players. Like, I was doing a straight brawler, and this was and this was a way to kind of manage some of these encounters in a way that I wouldn't if I was playing just a straight brawler in a Souls game.
Like, different kinds of range encounters too. Like, you can configure the Gauntlet to be 3 different types of ranged attack. And then later, once you unlock the runes, you can customize it in interesting ways. Yeah. Like, the Gauntlet's actually pretty cool. It doesn't feel very Soulsy, but like, it would be welcome in like a Darksiders game or like something like that. Like, it's a pretty good solution to that, I think. There's
an audio log that talks about how it's fueled by hatred.
Sure.
Which who was the monster that you picked this up off of?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, Tales Untold.
It's Antanas has been studying it. That's one of those, like, the audio logs that begins with Mighty Antanas. Like, his artificer or whatever has leaved some of these around.
Mighty Antanas in the Corpusarium.
Yeah.
He went he went over to Morrowind in the Corpusarium.
Yeah. He's like, I'm done with this game. The lore logs are actually arranged by subject. Mm-hmm. If you are actually interested in them, there is a guy on YouTube who has put them all, like all of the ones for one subject up. So you can watch a video that's like 3 minutes and explains everything Lords of the Fallen has to say about this subject or subject Y.
Yeah.
I'll put those in the show notes. And they, it's not great, but it's there, and it's better than like hunting them down sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'll need to do that before the next episodes. I didn't realize that was there.
Yeah, I should have given you. I just found out about them today. Yeah. I would have given you a heads up.
I wouldn't have had time.
No.
Yeah.
There we are.
There's honesty. Yeah. So you continue along these walls, and you find your second NPC. You're just collecting them like baseball cards. This is Yetka.
Yes. So Yetka is like, I mean, there aren't very many characters in this game. She's going to drop this monk off the side of a thing. And it's
she's
funny.
A Spider-Man villain.
Yeah, it's very Spider-Man. And then you can say like, drop him, which I was like, like leave him alone. But it actually means drop him off the thing. And for some reason, she's, you're the boss, and just does whatever you say. And as far as I can tell, there are no consequences to that choice. Like, the things that there are consequences, like who's going to show up later, are really weird. Mm-hmm. There's one later where you make a choice and the person does show up later, but it does nothing. So this guy, I think it's just whatever you feel like doing. Mm-hmm. And so she's kind of exploring this land as well. She's looking for something called the Passage, mm-hmm. and needs her dagger, and gives you this kind of side quest.
Yeah. So yeah, this is purely optional. You can do this if you want to kind of like sequence break. It's kind of worth it because it takes you into kind of a neat little area of this rampart. So it's in your interest because you're going to pick up more armor that you likely won't be able to use.
Yeah, depending. And like, well, that's true. But then also, like, I got a lot of did a lot of mixing and matching mm-hmm. armor stuff too, just to stay under medium.
Me too.
Weight. So it was useful just having extra armor in my arsenal, so to speak. I had a bigger problem finding weapons I wasn't going to use. Like, every weapon that was keyed to faith or dexterity, like, were just worthless to me.
Yeah.
So 2/3 of things in the game, and I guess that's true of Souls too. Like, you have a build, so weapons aren't that useful.
What's great about this is the attack stat that it shows and sorts by is actually informed. So if you don't reach the requirement, it'll show you effectively what the attack rating is given your current stats. So it'll
I like that a lot too.
Yeah, that is actually a really, really kind interface feature. And it's great because as you level up and increase stats and stuff, it'll cause things that are more viable to kind of like bubble to the top.
Yeah, it actually shows your best stuff near the top.
It even takes scaling into effect as well.
Yeah, which that's very friendly. Yeah. Like the interface and like changing equipment. You can also equip an entire set of armor all with one at a time, rather than doing it individually. Like the actual interface for equipping your guy is really pretty good.
Yeah.
So you go down here into this tower. This is where you first meet the spiders, which we talked about. These guys are really hard.
Oh yeah,
and they do a lot of damage. And like this is the first major enemy you're going to run into, I think. And later, you run into more of them. But at first, like they poison you, which is just damage over time. And and there are no antidotes. It just kind of runs out eventually. But these guys are pretty tough.
Yeah, they do tons of damage at once, especially if they can get up on you.
Yep.
Also around here, like, in order to get down here, you have to do a Dark Souls type drop off of the ledge onto an outcropping. But even beyond that, you have these kind of catwalks, the scaffolding outside, which requires you to platform, and somehow that is even clunkier in this.
I didn't have that big of a problem with it. No, I did. I honestly didn't, and it's. I think it's me. I don't think it's you, because I've seen that as a common complaint. But it didn't. Like, maybe I've just gotten very used to Dark Souls jumping, but there's really just 2 jumps in this part they have to make, and neither of them bothered me that much.
Yeah.
So
I fell a couple of times, like in a way that felt like, I clipped through the geometry.
Yeah, and that's probably what it was. Like I just got past the box, the solid box, or what have you.
Yeah.
To make that not happen, so I just didn't see it. But it's kind of a fun area to explore. Like it does feel treacherous outside. So you get her the key, and she gives you the key to the catacombs. You can't totally sequence break the game here, but you can actually make a dip and get the, arguably the best weapon for almost all the game.
Yeah.
If you're a strength character, you can go down and get my axe right away, and my axe is pretty amazing. Otherwise, though, helping her out has the mechanical benefit of letting you get into the catacombs earlier, and then also letting you skip a boss later.
Yeah.
So
it's good to have her along with you.
Yep. Yep. And like at this point, it was my first time through the game. I was just like hungry for any story, so I was going to take it. Like why wouldn't I want to go along on this optional thing? I'm curious about it.
So past her, through this little guard tower area, you encounter the next boss, which is the Commander.
The Commander. This guy has in that little tower area, there's a little note about him, about this famous Rogar lord who inspired, he has his amazing shield and inspired loyalty among his crew and accepted no cowards or something like that, which is the one thing that hints about his special win condition.
Yeah, which is to defeat him without blocking, which is really hypocritical. He's got a shield. He's noted for it.
Yes, it is his thing.
Yeah.
And his kind of gimmick is that he summons ads, but kindly, like you don't fight them at the same time like Mirror Knight. Like he just puts himself under like a force field, and you fight the guy off before you can fight him some more.
Yeah. So this ends up turning into a little bit of a rhythm where you're doing a bunch of damage to him until he decides to turtle up, and then dealing with these kind of tough enemies. Like something that becomes more of a factor after this, but is kind of a factor now, is that enemies are much more defensively oriented.
Yeah.
In this game than in others of this ilk. So they escalate in number and in type, and become a little bit of an issue. Yeah. Something about fighting him just by himself. He has a slam that does an AoE, which is to discourage you from kind of like being up and circling. I feel like a large number of the bosses kind of account for some of the behaviors we've developed.
Yeah.
In order to kind of shake you out of these habits.
Yeah. So like typically, like if you have to have one, strategy for these guys, it's to kind of stay at medium distance and then run up when they do something that you can do it. Like doing a kind of a quarter circle around their flank was my signature move.
Yeah.
To hit them during certain parts.
And that medium distance is really important because, like, at long distance, they can attack you and you can't attack them. At close distance, they're probably going to do something like this that, either, incapacitates you or does damage without opening themselves up. Staying at the medium distance kind of lets you float in and out of triggering an attack that's going to make them open up.
Yep. Yeah. This is where that Shard of Heroes secret comes in.
Yeah, that's probably the huge shrine that I couldn't get into off to the right.
Yeah, well, to your left.
Oh, okay.
If you're facing the monastery.
Okay.
There are 3 statues of the judges, which all are warrior, thief, or priest. And you use the Shard of Heroes, you can do 2 things with it. If you use it outside of battle, it lets you respec. So if you use it on a different class, you can start as that class. If you use it as your same class, you can assign your skill points again. If you use it during the battle, the boss will destroy the statue, which gives you tons of experience and gives you a pretty good weapon.
Oh.
Enough to gain like 5 levels at this point. Like it's a pretty significant experience bonus.
So you sacrifice the ability to respec in order to get this kind of short-term gain.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you fight another boss fight here later, and that boss will do the same thing. You just need to be able to have a boss you can trick into destroying the statue.
Yeah.
But yeah, and that is the end game of that really weird little hidden passage way back at the beginning of the game. Like I kind of dig that they put something this big, like the ability to respec, like as a very hidden thing. I kind of like, and it does. But my first time through the game where I didn't notice that, I just thought like, oh shit, like these are big dumb statues I can't do anything with. Like there are statues later you can't do anything with either. And I figured out, like I had to read online what you do with those.
Yeah.
But there is something there. Like it's not just arbitrary a lot of the time. It's just hidden.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Yep. Again, the sense of mystery imbuing things that otherwise would be unremarkable with a sense of potential. Right.
Yep.
Dig that. Yeah. So after this, you kind of approach this citadel and you find out that the main way in is barred.
It's noteworthy that you have no reason to want to go into the citadel now. I'm just going, all of the movement I'm doing now is that like maybe I'll run into Kaslo, maybe I won't, but I'm just going to go the way that the game will allow me to go.
Yeah. And that has led me to, waste a lot of time thinking about where Kaslo would be. So I spent more time than necessary probably looking around the monastery, thinking that if it wanted me to go somewhere, it would give me an objective to go there.
Right.
Like
right.
the fact that there is an objective that kind of like pops up every once in a while to remind you of that thing makes you think that the objectives are going to be more useful than they are.
It tells you what you need to do, but gives you no indication of how to do it. And that's frustrating.
Yeah.
Again, it just needs a map, like really badly. So you can't go in through the front door. You start going through the side. You run into the captain, which I guess is another NPC in the game. And this is a guy. He's the major domo of what's his head and Antanas.
Yeah, Aslan.
Aslanus. He's the major domo of Atlantis. He's Namor. But he's this guy hates your guts.
You're a loose cannon, Hawken.
Exactly. Like he's just, and again, like if anything to this world, like everybody disrespects you because you're a criminal. Like criminals don't get out.
Yeah.
There's no restorative justice.
Again, sins are not forgiven.
Yep.
Yeah. So he kind of tells you, Kaslo is he checked in. He's totes alive still. He is down in the crypt looking for this alternate way in to the Citadel, which is currently in siege mode.
Yes. Yep. So you move along the wall. There is another kind of loot crystal, and this is gives you this kind of weird void challenge where the darkness hurts you.
Yeah.
And you have to follow this light and stay in the light to go from enemy to enemy and chest to chest to get stuff. Like again, pretty neat. Like breaks up the gameplay with some variety here. There is also the like another really serious difficulty wall as you're heading down towards the cemetery and the crypt are the knights.
Yeah.
Like the giant kind of great knights.
This is one of the biggest nuisances throughout the entire game for me is the fact that, even with just the marauders who get shields or the knights who have their shields, everything kind of is, spec'd to just make you inflict scratch damage on them. And kind of force you into these different rhythms that you might not be aware of what to do. The fact that everything has a tower shield is really frustrating. And I think that it non-trivializes a lot of fights that actually ought to be trivial in terms of the pacing of the game.
I agree with you. I also think that I would never disagree that they don't do it too much because they definitely do. Eventually I figured these guys out. It just wasn't in any way that I think it's a weakness for a different reason. Because I eventually figured these guys out and having a thing this guy's hard, you have to figure out a way to fight them. Like that's what video games are. That's great.
Yeah.
The fact that, however, though, I could never, my way of getting around these guys was just to wait until I would imagine their stamina was depleted at all, or stamina, and then heavy attack them to guard break them.
Yeah.
And I could do it consistently, but if I had been playing a thief or anything other than a guy with my axe, I have no idea how I'd fucking get through these guys.
Yeah.
Like, eventually, if you get enough strength, you can shield bash them into dropping their guard and get in a hit, and they become pretty easy. Otherwise, like, it would just be me, like, kind of trying to circle, stay in that medium distance to get them to an attack, kind of sidestep, and then do a couple of strong attacks. And oftentimes that would get through and hit them once or twice.
Yeah. I think a better way to put what I said is that fighting these guys feels like chewing through gristle.
Yeah.
There's like it's tedious in a way that doesn't reward the kind of thinking that I want to do in this kind of game. Even after you figure that out.
I don't like fighting them. Like, it's not like it's a fun fight to fight them. It just, like, it didn't bother me just that they were a big tanky shieldy enemy. Like, I thought that was fine.
Yeah.
It just bothered me that, like, they're not that fun to fight. And then later when they start mixing them up with things, like, I never figured out how to fight these guys in a room full of other enemies.
Yeah.
And that was always, pretty tricky.
Yeah.
They're probably my least favorite enemy in the game too.
Yeah. And what's weird is, like, once they stumble upon these guys, they don't really stray from that.
Yeah. It's a progression. Like, these guys are around from now on.
Yeah. It's like organic chemistry.
Yep, shield bash is your friend. If you go down this little back door to the Citadel, you can't get in there yet, but there is a rune door, which you have these runes. We don't know what they're good for yet, but we've collected a couple of them. But you can also use them to unlock chests and doors.
Yeah.
And you can get into a chest that gives you a potion down this way.
Yeah.
Which is useful.
Yep. So in order to find Kaslo, you're kind of headed down these walls out into the outskirts of this citadel to find the cemetery. Along the way, you find a burned watchtower where you can use some bloody flint that you found. I'm not swearing in British there. It is actually flint with blood on it.
Yes.
In order to activate a quest later, you're kind of lighting a beacon to draw some soldiers this way.
Yep, and you get a good experience award for doing this. You're heading down the snowy path. There's kind of two different ways. You can go up that way towards the cemetery. There's also like a little of a back door. You can go towards the cemetery that has one of those loot gates in it if you fall off of that tower on the back. But either way you're doing it, you're heading down here. You're introduced to a couple of new enemies. These golems, which are super quick but super, weak. No defense guys. And it's important to, like, if you go the back door, you don't run into these guys yet. Going the front door is useful to run into these guys because you're going to deal with them in a little bit.
Oh, boy, will you.
Yeah.
Yep.
This
is something the game does a lot later. Like, you're going to want to learn how to fight these guys because they're going to be complicated by elements.
Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, you come across the crypt where Kaslo is standing by a strange opening. And he says that the presence of a nearby lord is stopping him from opening a way to get either to the Citadel or to this Rogar realm.
Yeah, who knows? So ultimately, you have to take out that so you can go into the Rogar realm eventually and actually take them out. But before that, there's a Rogar Lord hanging out in the cemetery. If you go the back way, you get a good hint as to what this guy's gimmick is. They're like from the Gravekeeper. There's a Gravekeeper note that tells you what you're going to have to do to deal with the Worshipper.
So the Worshipper, he is another big guy who has a scythe. Wait, does he have a scythe? Shield, no shield. There we go. So a little bit of variety happening here. And this is kind of the biggest arena that we've fought in so far, I think, at least the most varied.
It's also the only one that we've had where the arena plays into the fight.
Yes.
Like the arena is very important to the fight.
Yeah. So he has kind of this little shockwave attack that will slow you down. And this is meant to kind of leave you open to these golems that he summons in order to get to attack you, along with kind of his Nito-esque energy finger blasts.
Yes. Yeah.
Finger blast.
So and kind of yes, he finger blasts you. The gimmick to this guy is that every once in a while he's kind of got two. Like every once in a while he does this huge energy blast that destroys everything in the cemetery except for you if you're standing in these little gazebos.
Yeah, he takes a knee and starts like praying for like Judgment Day or something.
Yeah, because he's a Rogar Lord and can somehow...
He's the worshipper.
Yeah, he worships something. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with this guy. But you have to go and get inside one of these gazebos, and it's made tricky because of the golems that are there. So they're going to harry you while you're in. And this is the guy, when I started trying to play through on New Game Plus, this is what stopped me. Because I even with my end game shield, I didn't have enough stability to fight the golems while waiting. They would knock me out of the gazebos.
Shit.
Or like kill me. This was really, really hard on New Game Plus for me.
And that's instant
they just did
death.
so much. Yeah, if you're caught in this thing, you die. So essentially, you get in your hits while he's praying and then go hide in one of these things. If you trick him into destroying one of these things, it stuns him for a long time.
Yeah.
So if you hang out in a shelter, you can also get a bunch of free hits by making him destroy it, but then next time he does the power slam or whatever, you have fewer kind of ports in the storm.
Right. How does the Gravekeeper's note articulate that?
He talks about how there are certain like holy places that he's always felt safe and protected. Like, or something like, when I take shelter in the shrines in the graveyard, I always feel protected or something like that. I don't know the exact wording because it's Lords of the Fallen. But it's something to that effect. He hints at the importance of standing in those things.
It is a locus of sanctuary.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Something like that. It's the Senator of Sanctuary. So anyway, you fight this guy. He's pretty hard. I would say this is by far out of the 3 bosses we fought the hardest one so far.
Yeah. It's not, aside from that note, it's not signposted very well. I had to look at a guide to figure out how to survive that, because otherwise those gazebos really blend in with the scenery.
Yeah.
They don't look functional.
Yeah. Well, they're lit up more than everything else. But I can see what you mean. If you get him to kill 2 of his golems, which will definitely happen, no matter what, you get the special version of his weapon, but his weapon's not great. And I think it's like a faith hammer, a faith scaling hammer. That's not my Christian rock band.
No, is that the sequel to Ghost World?
Yes, Faith Hammer.
Where Blues Hammer goes Christian.
It goes to the Faith Hammer. Faith Hammer. I'm kind of into that too. Faith Hammer and the Senator of Blood. That's my favorite Harry Potter book.
I think Faith Hammer would be a lady.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Be like a sexy stripper by night, detective by day.
Stripper
I'm just saying stripper because Faith is
night.
I'm just saying like Faith stripper because Faith is a real strippery name.
Yeah, I went to school with 2 girls who were named Faith.
Did they become strippers?
I have no idea.
I'm not trying to be sexist. I'm being sexist. I just think that's like it's a name like Candy or like
it feels like a self-assigned name that would it'd be a very clever stripper. Who would use that?
Yeah, it is. That's the inversion of Falls from Grace and Torment.
Yeah,
is that she who does not have the faith. Like that's part of the reason why that's her name.
Can we stop talking about strippers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So after you kill the stripper, you get to you can go into, if you want to, you can go into the catacombs, which is a huge meat wall. But again, you can go and get my axe, which is great.
Yeah, your shit broke. Yeah,
go get your dumb weapon name.
Yep, I ended up using my axe a lot. It was really good.
My axe is great. Like it is an amazing weapon. It's good well into for the entire middle part of the game. Mm-hmm. During the entire next episode, I'm going to use it essentially. Yeah. But the names on the weapons are really stupid. It's like Pain, Blister, Scab. Like I'm pretty sure there is a weapon called Scab.
Illumination.
Point. Crunch.
Betrayal.
They all sound like American Gladiators.
Zap. Renegade.
Yes.
Nitro.
Ice. Pyro.
Man, I was thinking about American Gladiators earlier today.
Those guys are great.
Yeah. Didn't one of them get popped trying to steal bus fare or something like that?
I haven't kept up on Blaze. I don't know.
Oh man, behind the jousting stick.
Yeah, pugil stick.
Oh, pugil stick. Okay.
That's what those things are called.
Huh.
Get it right.
They're giant Q-tips.
Yeah, but for some reason they had a name and it was pugil stick.
Which just means fight stick. It's a fancy way to say fight stick.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think I've said this before. My friend Derek, when I was in social studies in 8th grade, we got purposely separated because we were always goofing. And one of the things is we were talking about ancient Greek gladiators, and Derek kept whispering the American Gladiators theme into my ear, and I couldn't not laugh at it and had to be separated. But it was, the teacher, and she was awful too. Like she was like a real cranky, like stereotypical, like mean teacher.
Yeah.
And he was just to
the microphone makes me laugh.
Like while she's talking about gladiators, it was very funny.
Also, the American Gladiators theme very similar melodically to the Price is Right theme.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, somebody should do a mashup.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, that's get on it, girl talk. Like, actually, like DJ Doug Pound, the guy who opens up for Tim and Eric, always does like TV theme mashup stuff.
I'm down.
And does like a lot of like local radio and local NPR jingles, and local commercial jingles, and he could do that, and it'd be really great.
That's a good. That's a good gimmick. Good novelty.
Yeah, he's great. He's very funny.
Cool. So you defeat the worshiper and you go back to Caslo, who says the dumbest thing. I guess his scythe couldn't keep up with your axe.
Yep. Good one. Good classic goof, Caslo.
Classic Caslo zing.
Yeah, Caslo. It's a more classic Caslo comedy.
KKK.
So you're heading into the Rogar realm with Yetka, and this is where we're ending this episode.
Yes.
So yeah, it is time to go. I remember when I first got here, I was pretty excited to go somewhere that wasn't a snowy castle.
Joke's on you.
Like, it's ash now.
It's like Silent Hill. Ooh. Yeah. I think it's cool when Silent Hill does that. I don't think it's cool here.
So that's episode 1.
Mm-hmm.
If you have responses about Lords of the Fallen, we're doing all of those in one episode with the 4th episode. So hit us up at Duckfeed.tv/contact and let us know what you think of Lords of the Fallen.
Yeah. If you're playing along, next time we're going to be covering up from the entrance to the Rogar realm through the Beast.
Yes, which means really through the catacombs, because nobody can remember the boss or the area, what they mean. So, and the catacombs are one of the very few distinct areas in the game.
Right.
So, what can they do to help us out, Cole?
Well, they can support us on Patreon. That is patreon.com/DuckFeedTV. People have been killing it recently.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yeah, you can do that and get some cool gifts and rewards and stuff like that. Early access to shows. If you back above $10, you get something physical. It's real neat.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You can also write a review or rate us on iTunes. People have also been great about that, so we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
additionally, the people who are using our Amazon link are the unsung heroes of the network. That is at duckfeed.tv/tipjar. We have some people who've been killing it on that. Again, everybody killing it. It's one extra step. We have links for not every region, but for Great Britain, the United States, and Canada. And we appreciate that as well. Gary, you put out some music recently.
I did. If you got $2 floating around in your old PayPal account, why not, or Amazon.com account, or whatever you want to call it, why not go over to duckfeed.tv/store and get Apologia? I think it's Apologia. Mm-hmm. Do you know how to pronounce that word? I should have named it if I didn't know how to pronounce the word.
I say something close to Apologia.
Yeah, Apologia. Yeah, it's a rhetorical device. And it is
also
an
actor, a fine actor.
Yes. And it is that is a deep cut. The it's his daughter.
Okay.
She's Apologia. I don't know why the voice for it was just the smooth skin voice was by Robert Loggia.
Robert Loggia.
I'm Robert Loggia. Smooth skin. But yeah, you can buy that EP, and then I also have other music that's on for sale on that site too. Yeah. But this is a shorter deal. It is 10 songs.
Yeah.
Thus, it is short.
Made in the Korg DS. It's real cool.
Yeah. No, thanks. Yeah, mostly done Korg DS. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then just because I haven't said it on a podcast yet, I finished doing Baldur's Gate for Infinity Engineer. So if you want to read the entire, more or less, it's a Let's Play. Like it's a blog with some other stuff in it too, but it's sequentially me playing through Baldur's Gate and talking about it. There are 14 entries up on Infinity Engineers, and then by the time this lands, the intro entry for Arcanum will be up.
Yeah, I'm excited about the Arcanum.
Introducing what's up with Troika essentially.
Yeah.
And how less equipped I am to cover Arcanum because I don't have D&D to fall back on. So it's going to be an interesting season, I guess, of that blog.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it. I already started playing Arcanum, and it is delightful.
Yeah.
So
cool. I think that's about it. Thank you, everybody, for listening. If you haven't played Lords of the Fallen, give it a shot. I think
it is worth it, especially now that it's been on sale so many times. It's like $9 on Xbox One right now on the store, I think.
Yeah.
And one of those sales, it's like $9. Like, it's worth that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just if you think like, man, they were pretty negative about that, it's still worth it if you're into Souls to check out like something that tries to do the same thing by contrast. And I hope that we made it clear that there are some things that it does really, really well.
Yeah, I think so too. And some of that stuff is still to come too.
Yeah.
Like it's not all in the this first part. We're going to talk about some cool stuff. Anyway, until next time, what should they do, Cole?
They should watch out for the Forsaken Flame.
The Forsaken. The Forsaken would be a good one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just rattle them off.
And we all pray that we will have far more soon.
the evolved.
From the Webster's Dictionary Book of Nouns.
The cabinet.
Again, playing into the senator thing.
Yeah, I would fight the cabinet and the senator.
Yeah.
The cabinet's like a Binding of Isaac enemy.
Yeah. I would fight the minority whip.
Yeah. Yeah.